The evolution, or perhaps the de-evolution of grass. From nature's favorite plant to humanity's frontal cortex scrambler, today we're diving deep into how the za went from balanced foliage to bioengineered potent lettuce, all in the name of science and education. And by the end of this, you'll finally understand why every old head looks at modern za and says, "That ain't the Lord's loud boy.
That's the devil's lettuce."
What do I mean by that? Well, let me set the scene. The year is 1967. It's the summer of love in San Francisco, California. Thousands of young people are pulling up to the city in hopes of finding inner peace, new music, and an altered state of mind. A group of wide-eyed college kids link up with a guy who, according to legend, is slinging some exotic spiritual third eye-opening Zaza, the true symbol of peace. Enter Charles Zachary III, local Zaza pug. He reaches into his bag and dramatically reveals some oregano-looking greenery. The students lean in, sniff it, and say, "Oh yes, that's some fine lettuce you got there, sir." They cough up $3, which was actual money back then, and head off to their hippie van to fuel up for their night's hippie drum circle. First J ever, the whole bag gone in one sitting, and guess what? Nobody greened out, nobody had an existential meltdown. Why? Because that so-called exotic was rocking about 1% THC, maybe 2% CBD. Honestly, it was more common than mind-blowing, the original balanced strain. Fast forward to 2025, same scenario, 3 newbies hop in a Tesla Model Y with a bag of modern exotic, infused 48% T, 0.0001% CBD. You're not getting peace, love, and harmony out of that van, bro. You're getting silence, paranoia, and 3 people glued to that big, fat, beautiful screen. Now, don't get me wrong, no disrespect to modern za. I love me some stare at the microwave while your hot pocket spins and you question your existence highs, but the problem is, that's basically all we've got left. See, thanks to capitalism and the wonderful cycle of supply and demand, the market did what the market does best, chase the strongest product possible. People wanted that high T grass, so for the past half century, growers have been selectively breeding for maximum THC. Every new generation of bud got stronger, flashier, louder, and somewhere along the line, CBD, the chill little molecule that used to balance it all out, got completely left behind. The unsung hero of the za basically got bred out of existence to the point of you potentially having to go on a nationwide quest just to find a balanced strain. So, how did we get here? Well, it all started at 1960s, the flower power era. Average potency 1 to 2% T, 1 to 2% C. The 1960s were when cannabis first hit mainstream culture, not as a drug, but as a statement. It was rebellion rolled up in paper. The summer of love turned San Francisco into the epicenter of peace signs, guitar solos, and people who thought wearing shoes was a capitalist construct. Grass back then was imported brick buds, mostly from Mexico, Colombia, or Thailand, stuffed with stems, seeds, and enlightenment. The average potency around 1% T, sometimes stretching to 2 if the stars aligned and your plug had international connections, son. But it wasn't all that weak. It was balanced. There was nearly as much CBD as THC, which kept the high mellow and manageable. You could smoke a whole J talking about ending the Vietnam War and still remember where you parked your van. It wasn't about getting obliterated. It was about expanding consciousness, or at least trying to figure out why your friend had been staring at a lava lamp for 45 minutes. This was the hippie za, nature's peace pipe, or by today's standards, basically oregano. But back then, anything you got was the bomb, which these days, people don't just call anything the bomb. You'd have to make something next level, like a nationwide legal gummy that hits twice as fast. Oh yeah, that's exactly where today's sponsor, 5CBD Quick Hits 15mg gummies, come in. 5 is pushing the limits with innovative nationwide legal Zaza, and their Quick Hits are the latest breakthrough. Unlike regular gummies that can take up to 45 minutes to hit, Quick Hits are formulated for maximum potency and minimum wait time. You'll start to feel it in just 10 to 15 minutes, which also helps to avoid that classic "these eddies ain't shit" And the best part, if you've never tried them, 5 is giving every new customer the chance to try quick hits for free. Already a customer? Returning customers get 50% off. All you have to do is be 21, head to the pinned comment, and check it out. 1970s, hippie hangover. Average potency 2 to 3% T, about 1% C. The flower power dream didn't die overnight. It just got groovier. The 1970s carried the cultural hangover of the 60s, where everyone still preached peace and love, but now they did it while debating which Pink Floyd album sounded better high. Grass quality improved slightly. People started cultivating locally and importing better strains like Panama Red or Acapulco Gold. Names that sounded luxurious, even though the average potency was still around 2 to 3% THC with a little CBD still flowing around. ZA was social. You'd pass a J around, everybody got a turn, and nobody coughed like they were dying. You didn't have to warn your friend, take a small hit bro, this shit's crazy. The worst thing that could happen was zoning out during a record flip or getting too deep in a conversation about the moon landing being fake. In short, grass was still a group experience. The goal wasn't to escape reality, just to make it funnier. Until the 1980s, war on drugs and rise of hydroponic cultivation. Average potency 3 to 4% T, around 0.5% C. The 1980s, Reagan, neon hair, metal music, and the war on drugs. The US government declared an all-out war on cannabis, complete with just say no commercials that made it sound like a gateway to eternal damnation. Ironically, this crackdown made grass stronger. Smugglers got smarter, growers went underground, literally, and indoor cultivation started taking off. Hydroponics, high-pressure sodium lights, and nutrient formulas became the new weapon of peace. Average potency crept up to 3 to 4% T, but CBD started vanishing. The goal shifted. No one cared about balance anymore. They wanted potency that could justify the risk of, going to jail. ZA in the 80s was a statement and a felony. If you were smoking, you were either a rebel or a roadie. The high was still manageable, but definitely sharper. The kind of ZA that made you think your answering machine was talking to you, goddamn. This was the decade where cannabis evolved from hippie habit to countercultural sports, and it took off even more in the 1990s, the chronic era. Average potency 5 to 8% T, usually under 0.3% C. By the 90s, the underground growers had perfected their craft. Hydro was booming, genetics from Amsterdam were spreading, and suddenly the world was introduced to names like Northern Lights, Skunk One, and White Widow. Average T levels climbed to around 5 to 8%, which doesn't sound like much now, but back then it hit different. Mostly because CBD had dropped below 0.3%. That balance the 60s had gone. Now it was smoke first, ask questions later. And culturally, this was the chronic era. Dr. Dre turned ZA into a brand, Snoop turned it into a lifestyle, smoking wasn't taboo anymore. It was cool. Blunts replaced J's and people started measuring time in hot boxes. You could still function, but now you felt it. This was the first time people really started greening out. The first time you got that, oh no, I might be too high, man. But it was still mostly chill. You'd just laugh too hard, eat an entire box of cereal, and call it night. The 90s were the bridge, the sweet spot before cannabis went full Super Saiyan. The 2000s. Kush takeover. Average potency 8 to 12% T, usually under 0.2% C. Welcome to the 2000s, the birth of the modern weed economy. OG Kush, AK-47, Blue Dream Sour Diesel strains that became household names. Everybody knew a guy who grew his own, and dispensaries were starting to pop up in California. Average T levels hovered between 8 to 12%, and CBD practically extinct. By now, cannabis wasn't just a plant, it was a product. Growers started competing for higher THC numbers because that's what sold. Grass reviews became like wine tastings, notes of citrus, diesel, and mild ego death. This was the decade when people realized weed wasn't the same anymore. The highs were more intense, the paranoia started showing up, and tolerance became a full-time job. You didn't need to smoke a J, one strong hit could send you on a vision quest. It was the golden age of Kush culture. Everyone was high, but somehow also stressed about it. Which that stress kind of started fading in the 2010s, the legalization boom. Average potency 15 to 20% T, usually under 0.1 C. Then came the 2010s, the green rush. Legalization swept across states, dispensaries exploded, and suddenly weed had branding, merch, and loyalty programs. Average T levels jumped again. 15 to 20% was now considered standard. The CBD in most recreational strains basically non-existent. Growers had bred plants for pure potency, creating buzz that could probably power a small drone. This was when grass science went corporate. You had flour, concentrates, dabs, wax, shatter, live resin, weed so strong it came with its own vocabulary. The line between I'm chillin' and I can feel colors got thinner every year. It was the era of customization, but ironically, almost no one was choosing balance. Everyone wanted the highest T possible, not realizing we basically erased the chill molecule CBD that kept the experience grounded. Which brings us to the 2020s, the Zaza age. Average potency 25 to 35% T, maybe one lonely CBD molecule floating around. And now we've arrived, the Zaza age, the final form of cannabis, the endgame boss of botany. Weed isn't just strong anymore, it's engineered. Every nug looks like it's grown in a NASA clean room under 24-hour supervision by a dude who calls himself a terpene artist. Dispensary menus, bro, they sound like a fully optioned out car. 28% T, live resin infused keef, dust and solventless Syrahs and finish 3.5 G of pure enlightenment. Your average flower today clocks in between 25 to 35% T, and that's just your everyday gas station level loud. The real heavy hitters infuse pre-rolls, moon rocks, concentrates, casually push 45 to 80% T, bruh. CBD, practically gone. A rounding error in the lab results. The compound that once mellowed the ride got quietly bred out of existence. The MySpace of cannabinoids, forgotten but foundational. And the experience? It's intense. Weed used to be exclusively about connection, creativity, and relaxation. Now it's about surviving the eddy you thought didn't hit yet. You don't pass around herbal relief anymore. You pass around that loud. But here's the thing. We might not even fully understand how strong ZA has become because everyone's tolerance has skyrocketed. The average daily smoker today could outsmoke an entire 1980s drum circle and still finish a burrito after. Back then, 1J was an event. Now it's a warm-up. So when a casual or first-time user grabs a modern exotic, they're not easing into a mellow buzz, they're entering the quantum realm. And sure, there are still balanced options, CBD forward strains, 1-to-1 hybrids, low T flower, but they're the minority. Most dispensary shelves are designed for one thing only, maximum impact. The louder the better. The industry keeps feeding the same loop, higher T, lower CBD, stronger hits because that's what sells. Of course, people did get anxious and paranoid from weed back in the day too. That's not new, but the risk was lower. Today with THC concentration several times higher and CBD nearly absent, the chance of panic attacks, anxiety, or even short-term psychosis is significantly increased, especially for first-timers or people who don't smoke often. It's like the difference between sipping a beer and chugging a bottle of vodka. Technically the same category, but a very different evening. Modern ZA doesn't just take you on a trip, it catapults you into orbit and then hands you a mirror halfway up. It's impressive, it's profitable, and it's a little terrifying. The same plant that once fueled Woodstock now also fuels anxiety, Uber Eats orders, and psychological crisis over microwave timers. But hey, who am I to say if we've de-evolved or evolved? Make sure you comment down your opinion below, and until next time, peace!